Okay, one thing I wanted to go over, I'm just picking one of these randomly. You could do this on a graph, but I'm only going to do one where we have coordinates shown. And a lot of you probably understood the concept pretty well when you went over this stuff the last 2 Fridays. But I wanted to make sure I went over it just to clarify anything. If you have questions, let me know. But we have our 2 formulas right here. The midpoint formula and the distance formula are up on the board. I'm going to run through both of these for one coordinate. So I'm going to go with number 10 right here. And the good thing is, for both of these formulas, it does not matter the order that you write these. Honestly, here's the thing. It doesn't even matter if you keep your, the 1 and the 2 in the correct order, like it did with partitioning line segments and other things where we needed to keep the orders the same. Here, if you mix up your x1 and x2 and you flip the order, you should still get the same answer, assuming you didn't make any other calculation errors. But let's kind of see what's happening. For midpoint, we are trying to find the average between 2 points. So that makes sense. You just take your x values and get the average of them. That's why it doesn't matter if you put x2 first or x1 first. And you can name these, your coordinates is x1, x2, whatever you'd like. So I'll go ahead and, to make sense of this a little bit, I'll just call this x1, y1, x2, y2, and I'm going to be looking at problem number 10 here. So if I mix up x1, x2, I'll still get the same answer for my x coordinate. The y is just going to be the average of our y values. So let's go ahead and do midpoint real quick. So I'll kind of do that up at the top. So our midpoint is going to be x1 plus x2 all over 2, so average them, and y1 and y2. I know this isn't the worksheet where you're supposed to do midpoint, but I'm just going to go over it. And the thing is, all you need are 2 coordinates. So I'm going over this because you will be assessed on this eventually. I don't know if I'm going to give you a separate kind of mini quiz on this, or if it'll be included with your next test. But I want to make sure that, and you'll have the formulas provided, so you don't need to worry about memorizing that. But I want to make sure that we've gone over it. Okay. So in this case, x1 and x2, x1 is 8, x2 is -1, 8 plus -1, divided by 2. For my y values, y1 is 5, y2 is 3. So we are always adding, but if it's a negative number, I'm adding, therefore, a negative number. All right, so now I can kind of do the next part, assess the top. That's going to be 7 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2. And so my final final point here is going to be 3.54. All right. That is the midpoint.
Man, that teacher did not tell us to do 5 by 2.
Okay. Well, if you are showing work, you don't have to go through every single step. I understand that you can probably just do the 8 plus -1 divided by 2. Just kind of do that all really quickly rather than writing it as 2 separate steps. But I need to see that you have the points written into the formula. Again, on this worksheet, the midpoint wasn't required, but distance was. So our distance formula, I'll write that down real quick. Distance equals the square root. It looks complicated. One thing I know that was talked about is that this is basically just rewriting the Pythagorean theorem. So you've got x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And here's the great thing. I'm just going to write something real quick. Let's say I mix this up, and I just get all kinds of wacky with this, and I do y1 minus y2. Oops, I put the y's first. And then I do x2 minus x1. I didn't have the same order going on. It's the same answer either way. Okay? So this one's a little bit forgiving. Now, use the formula as it's written just to make sure. But notice what I did here is I flipped around where the x's and the y's are, and I flipped the order here, y1 and y2. That doesn't change my answer. I'm just trying to show you that this is a very forgiving formula, but let's just use it as written. The reason it's forgiving is because of that squared. When we square numbers, what happens to our negatives? They turn positive. So if I flip something around, I get a negative when I should have had a positive. It doesn't matter because it's all going to become positive anyway. And then when you flip this around, if I'm adding a number here, and I just flip the order that I add them together, that doesn't change anything. All right? So this is essentially Pythagorean theorem. x2 minus x1 is the distance between the x coordinates. So now I can actually plug the numbers in. So in our case, x2 was -1. No reason not to keep it the right way. So x1 is 8, so minus 8 squared plus y2 is 3, y1 is 5. I'm always subtracting here. And now I can evaluate. And again, you need to show your work. And this is enough as far as work goes. I need to see that they're plugged in and you're using the formula correctly. Okay, so that means -1 minus 8 is -9. 3 minus 5 is -2. So I was saying it doesn't matter the order. We'll still get the same answer. Make sure you're paying attention. That is true, but here's where you can go wrong with distance formula. -1 minus 8. A lot of people struggle with their integer addition when there's negatives involved. So if you did -1 minus 8 and you came up with a -7 or something, well, obviously that'd throw off your answer. You're supposed to have -9. So that's where mistakes can still happen.
So we weren't supposed to do midpoint just to check, right?
On this one, you did not need to do midpoint. I just running through it. All right, so now we can just finish this up. What's -9 squared?
81.
Positive 81. -2 squared is?
4.
There you go. It's positive 4. So plus 4. So now you can see, if we had flipped this around and now I had 4 plus 81, my answer is still the same. Now, this becomes the square root of 85. When you plug that in your calculator, if you want to get a decimal answer, it's approximately what? Yeah, that's approximately 9.2. There will be, coming up very soon, in fact, I don't know if it'll be tomorrow. It could be. We're going to start looking at simplifying radicals. And this radical right here cannot be simplified. So this is the simplest we can get it. So if you left this as square root of 85, I would accept that. That's technically correct. If you wanted to go ahead and get your decimal answer, that's fine too. I think a lot of times we understand the decimal answer is a little better. So there it is. Any questions on the distance formula or the midpoint?
No.
All right. Again, kind of the main thing here is I don't want these just to be formulas that you plug numbers into and then you magically get an answer. It's just a way of trying to organize a very basic process, get the average of your two coordinates for the midpoint, and then use your Pythagorean theorem because we can always turn anything on a coordinate plane into a right triangle. And that's essentially what we're doing. So we're practicing the Pythagorean theorem. So anyways, if you didn't get a check mark, make sure you're going through and doing at least half of this. And I would say go over half just to make sure you don't get it returned a second time. But anyways, that's what we're doing in the short class today.